5 Live Formula One.
Good morning to you. Welcome to Shanghai. Formula One has headed to the Far East for the Chinese Grand Prix, round 2 of the Formula One calendar. The first of the sprint events too, but that is all done and dusted with a very entertaining sprint race earlier in the day, won by George Russell. Attention now turns, though, to Grand Prix qualifying. Up in the commentary box for this one alongside me, Harry Benjamin, is Formula E driver Sam Bird and the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. It's been a fun start to the day, Sam, with that sprint race. Very entertaining, and another formidable performance, shall we say, from George Russell and Mercedes.
It was formidable from George Russell. However, he does have competition, which is great. We saw Lewis Hamilton take the fight to him in the early stages of the sprint race. Charles Leclerc looked strong as well. So those two Ferraris working very well. However, there's still room to improve for them. I feel like they need to get on top of overheating the tyres and a little bit of graining. The Mercedes looks kinder on its tyre over the course of a race stint. Now, moving into qualifying, it's pretty clear and obvious that Mercedes are the car to beat, and it's the car to have, and George Russell is the driver to beat. But can anybody get close? Well, that will be the question. Lando Norris was the closest of the qualifiers for the sprint qualifying, although Charles Leclerc lost about half a second on the back straight during sprint qualifying yesterday with an issue, so hoping to put that right. So when it comes to one lap pace, it does seem like the Mercedes have an advantage, more so than they do when it comes to the race. But obviously this is all about one lap right now as we set the grid for the Chinese Grand Prix. Beautiful conditions as well, clear skies above, sun shining through, air temperature just under 18 degrees, track temperature just floating above 32 degrees. And the Shanghai International Circuit, well, it's just over 5.4 kilometres, 16 turns, 9 that go to the right and 7 that go to the left. It's a challenging track. We're about 30 kilometres northwest of the city centre in Shanghai. You've got that really long back straight, but you've got a couple of heavy braking zones as well, Sam, which will help with the energy management and then the regeneration. Yeah, I think energy management here has been less of an issue than it was in Melbourne. Firstly, because of the layout of the circuit. Secondly, they've had a race to work on things and improve their deployment strategies and figure out what to do, learn on the job, as it were. But yeah, turn 1, heavy braking, also turn 6, turn 11 and turn 14 and 16. So yeah, plenty of places to deploy. The Mercedes looks extremely strong for deployment in Sector 3. The Ferrari looks stronger, as well as the McLaren actually, in Sector 1. So different people doing different things around this track. Certainly are, as Lewis Hamilton is sat inside his Ferrari car waiting for the all clear from his chief mechanic to be sent out into the pit lane. Just a couple of minutes until we get the green light on at the end of the pit lane to kickstart the first part of qualifying Q1, where we look to eliminate the slowest 6 drivers. In terms of the Drivers' Championship, well, after one round in Australia and a sprint race where points are handed out to the top 8, George Russell leads by 10 points. He's got 33 to his name. Then comes his teammate Kimi Antonelli, joint on points with Charles Leclerc. Hamilton sits 4th with Lando Norris, the top 5 in the Drivers' Championship. Over in the teams, Mercedes already starting to build a lead, 55 points to their name. Ferrari sit in 2nd with 40 points. McLaren 3rd with 18. Then it's Red Bull with 8, only a point ahead of Haas, with Racing Bulls a further point behind them. Audi with 2 and Alpine with just the 1 point, completing those teams that have actually scored points. Nothing on the board yet for Williams, Cadillac or Aston Martin. So it will be a tall order for some of those teams that are struggling. Should we be a bit concerned though, Sam, about Red Bull and where their pace seems to be? Because sprint qualifying wasn't exactly brilliant for them either. I don't think we should be concerned. Well, I'm concerned. I think Max Verstappen, Isaac Hadjar and the whole of the Red Bull team would be disappointed, massively disappointed with where they are. I thought they had quite strong pace, looking at the timing sheets and watching how well they went at times in Bahrain in pre-season testing. It looked like if not Mercedes, then would Red Bull be the strongest team? And they played it down, and you thought, well, they're going to be right up there. But based on the performance in sprint qualifying, where Max Verstappen was 1.8 seconds off the pace of George Russell, there's a lot of work to do there. We have to remember as well that it's a whole new power unit for them in collaboration with Ford. They've taken it in-house, which is a completely new thing, and for that I think they've done an incredible job. But it's going to be a big old task to take the fight to Mercedes from where they are right now.
Well, let's see what happens. We're on for qualifying. Q1 is underway with 17.5 minutes and counting on the clock, and it's Valtteri Bottas's Cadillac that leads them out. A one-time pole sitter here back in 2019. Then for the Mercedes team, a year away from the sport, acting as the Mercedes reserve. He's back on the grid with Cadillac along with Sergio Perez, and couldn't actually finish the sprint qualifying earlier. Had an issue, the sprint race earlier, had an issue in that Cadillac as the sun glints off the white and black Cadillac. That's the livery they've gone for this year. It's a split livery down the side, and weaving left and right on his approach towards turn 11. Tight left-hander that sends you uphill as you curve right round the right-hander of 12 and then start to edge slightly downhill and set yourself up for that back straight. So
we actually saw Sergio Perez's car try and delaminate itself on the final lap of the sprint. I think it was either the engine cover at the rear or part of the diffuser or the barge board or part of the car decided to...
Sergio said on the radio, yeah, it's falling apart, everything. Sideboard, rear wing, everything's falling apart.
There you go. So, bit of a disaster for them, and that's a concern going into tomorrow's race.
Sideboard,
that was what was he said on the radio.
Side pod. I think someone misheard him, probably more than anything else.
Or he might have been in a rush to say it out loud. Either way, things that were breaking on the car that shouldn't have been breaking ever were causing him
definitely
concern.
shouldn't have been on the car if it was.
He'd been to IKEA, got some body
sideboard isn't quite on there.
Other companies are available.
I'm just reading the transcript, guys, okay?
I know, whoever wrote that transcript needs to reconfigure their learning about Formula 1 cars and what they're made of.
Well, either way, hopefully they bolted all the parts back together, although Perez is the only car yet to be out of the pit lane. Everybody else is now circling. Actually, I lie, the two Mercedes aren't out there either, along with Hülkenberg and Bortoleto, who have just peeled back in after an outlap. But Arvid Lindblad sets off on his first flying lap. Tough weekend so far for the British rookie.
Indeed, but I wanted to talk about Lewis Hamilton, because not only did he have a really good sprint, although he dropped back to third in the end, but he made a remark, Harry, we were talking about this in the gap, weren't we, between the sprint and qualifying, about why Mercedes looked so good in qualifying compared to their race pace. And he was talking about them having an extra engine mode, a bit like what he used to be familiar with, when he used to call it party mode back in the day when he was winning all those world championships with Mercedes. He thinks Mercedes have that again in their engine, which they're able to access from Q2 and Q3 basically, which you then can't use in the race because it would wear the engine too much, which is a really interesting revelation if that's true. It certainly looks that way, and it also raises the question of, if the factory Mercedes team have it, all the customer teams should in theory have it, but so far they don't seem to be benefiting from it. So the big question for us to delve into over the next sort of few days to work out what's going on there.
Yeah, Mercedes being a supplier of engines with their customer teams, including McLaren, Williams and Alpine. And they have to supply them the exact same engine, but they don't necessarily have to supply them with all of the information in terms of how to extract maximum performance out of it. Mercedes with the advantage, building their own engine and the chassis around that engine as well. That's the advantage you get for being a works team along with the likes of Ferrari.
But to address your Arvid Lindblad question, yes, he had a problem, didn't he, in practice yesterday, and then didn't qualify that well as a consequence of that problem, and then he was a bit in the wars in the race, got involved. Did he spin on the first lap, or did he crash?
I'm not sure whether he got tagged. We didn't actually see that on the television screens that we've got in front of us. So look, he's still super young. I think he's been very good since coming in. Very, very impressive all the way through testing. In Melbourne, he had an amazing first race weekend. And you're going to have difficult weekends in Formula One. It's just part and parcel. Every driver in Formula One history has had a bad weekend, and I wouldn't say it's been a bad weekend. It's just been difficult.
No, and you're going to get that, especially at a track that you've never been to before. Tough to find a rhythm, especially at a challenging track like this, but also where you only get one practice session, in which he didn't even get the full practice session either. So Lindblad out there, although on his first run did run quite deep down at turn 6 and wide, so had to bail out of that one. First lap times coming through on the board though, and to the top of the times is Max Verstappen on the medium tyre, 1:34.4, but Piastri is out there flying at the moment in the first 2 sectors.
He is a bit, not concerning, but Leclerc must have made a mistake, same as Hamilton. I mean, Leclerc's done a 34.5 on the softs compared to Verstappen 34.4 on the mediums.
Sometimes they do a kind of semi-fast lap as a sort of second build lap to get everything lined up, whether it be energy management or tyre temperature or whatever. So it might be that we're seeing with Leclerc.
It's the sound of Oscar Piastri heading into the sunlight as he flicks to the left-hander for the final corner, keeps it neat and tidy, the gravel waiting for you should you make a mistake, crosses the line, fastest of anybody in the first sector on the soft tyre, puts in a 1:33.990, 4 tenths clear of his teammate Lando Norris, and only a tenth clear of Nico Hülkenberg's Audi, who pops up into second.
Yeah, good job by Hülkenberg. He's been fast this weekend so far, hasn't he, for the Audi team? P11 in sprint qualifying, so he's going to want to go one better than that today and try and get himself into Q3.
Yeah, Nico Hülkenberg with a best qualifying effort of 7th here in Shanghai. His teammate Gabriel Bortoleto has joined him, and Hülkenberg, he was the one who caused the safety car actually in the sprint race with a technical issue on that car. Had a technical issue as well at the start in Australia. Talk about issues. Lewis Hamilton a few moments ago on his last lap, making his way through the double left-handers of turn 9 and 10. The back end of that Ferrari very loose, mounting the curb, full sideways lock, has to get off the throttle, gathers it all back up again, but not the ideal line to be taking from that.
And that's why he finds himself down in P15 at the moment, so he'll gather himself up again, recharge the battery and go again. But he's actually, having said that, he's gone into the pits presumably now to change onto a soft.
Just over 10 minutes to go then. Piastri in that P1 position, minutes to 2 Audis. Norris 4th with Max Verstappen in 5th. Gasly 6th ahead of Leclerc. Hadjar, Lawson and Behrman the top 10. Then it's Ocon, Lindblad, Sainz, Albon, Hamilton and Colapinto the top 16. It is the top 16 runners that all go through to Q2.
It feels good. The car just had some snaps. 60 on the braking.
So it feels good, the car, for Lewis Hamilton, but he just has some snaps under braking, as evidence from what we just witnessed going through turns 9 and 10.
Yes, I don't want to tempt fate, but it's beginning to look, isn't it, as if Hamilton's back to being Lewis Hamilton again this year, and what that says is, for some reason, we kind of knew this already, but it seems that it's just he couldn't adapt to those ground effect cars over the last 4 years. Why? I'll never be able to get my head around, but it does rather look like that's the case at the moment, that he's back to where he should be.
But do you know what though, Andrew? He adapted as much as he could. It's just he didn't have that last 0.1%, whereas before he was world-class, amazing, one of the best ever.
Yeah, but why? He is amazing and one of the best ever. It didn't affect Alonso. It didn't affect
I look at my career. Why was I miles faster on a Bridgestone tyre than I was on a Pirelli? And I was still competitive on a Pirelli, but I didn't quite have that extra edge that I did on a Bridgestone tyre, for example. So it's different people prefer different things, and you're allowed to prefer a different car and have a bit more of an edge with a different car or with a different regulation.
Qualifying is not the time to have this conversation. I've definitely got to come back, but
my comeback to that on myself would be, you're Sam Bird and he's Lewis Hamilton.
That was part of my comeback. Yeah,
and I completely get that. Anyway, on board with Kimi Antonelli. Just absolutely put myself down. But
no, don't do that, Sam. We'll talk about it.
But it's true though. It's true. Down the back straight, Kimi Antonelli. You can hear the lift off, hear the tone dipping in the engine as the battery power runs out down into turn 14, back on power. And now sweeping into turn 16 onto the brakes, take a little bit of the curb on the inside, the run to the line, what's the time? And it's P1 by 7/10.
Yeah, good lap from Antonelli. Russell's flying in the first sector as well. Russell, who's topped every single session so far this weekend, round the final corner. Active aero straight line mode activates, where the rear wing and the front wing both open down the main straight. Russell to the top just by 43 thousandths of a second, a 1:33.262 for George Russell. That's Alonso going down through the gears into the right-hander at turn 14 after the back straight, trying to get it straightened up again for the short run down towards the final corner. Alonso down in 19th at the moment. Aston Martin, who are down on parts when it comes to the power units, and puts himself up into 17th spot. Nearly got through into Q2 in Australia, just pipped at the end. Andrew Benson.
I was going to say, I'll tell you what, he split the Williams, but Alex Albon is on a lap at the moment, so let's see where he goes out.
Don't tempt fate, yeah.
But even so, it's definite progress from Aston Martin, because that's Alonso. He's less than a tenth slower than Carlos Sainz in the Williams, so that's very much progress from that team.
And there was time left on the table with I think he was a little bit early on power for that particular car at the moment, and there was a little bit of a snap-on exit and then a messy upshift as well, where he lost a bit of traction.
Yeah, and as he was putting it yesterday, the engine is what it is, which was sort of damning with faint, well, not damning with faint praise, but it's like everyone clear about the losses in the Honda engine. But they're talking about the more track time they get at Aston Martin, the more progress they'll make with the car, because they've had so little time to understand it so far. And this weekend they've got a bit of a reliability fix, even if the performance isn't there from the engine. It does seem to have made a difference.
Hamilton crossed the line, puts himself up into third, puts a clean lap together, 2.5 tenths down on George Russell with just under 6.5 minutes left. Then it is Russell who is quickest, ahead of Antonelli. Hamilton, Piastri and Hülkenberg the top 5, and 6th is Bortoletto. Then it's Colapinto who's up in 7th ahead of Hadjar. Norris and Verstappen the top 10. Gasly is in 11th ahead of Charles Leclerc. Lawson's down to 13th ahead of the 2 Haas cars, and Lindblad in 16th. In that elimination zone then, the 2 Williams cars of Albon and Sainz. Then comes Fernando Alonso, Bottas in the Cadillac, Stroll in the Aston Martin, and Sergio Perez, who has been out there but has come back into the pits. Hasn't set, we have set a lap time, but it's 4.2 seconds down. As I think, Sam, is there an issue for Arvid Lindblad?
There is. He's just been told to box that they've got an issue. We don't know what that issue is, but doesn't sound good with 5.5 minutes to go.
Just seeing on the radio, Lindblad reporting his battery is not charging, so some sort of issue there that they'll hope to iron out quickly if he can get that back recharging. Meanwhile, Lando Norris going for another run as we get towards the closing stages of Q1 with just over 5 minutes left to run. Lindblad might be in trouble here as he's only on the bubble. Norris is down in 11th, but personal best in sector 1 and 2. So too for Charles Leclerc. Norris crosses the line first. He puts that McLaren up into 4th spot, just behind Lewis Hamilton, the other Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. Fastest of anybody in the final sector, really ramped up the pace, did the Monegasque, puts himself just shy of a 10th clear of George Russell at the top of the times.
And if he stays there, this will be the first time so far this season that anybody has beaten George Russell in a competitive, well, every session's competitive, but in a qualifying or race situation.
That will be impressive, and I think Leclerc will take that to the bank happily, but he wants some points for it on Sunday too. Piastri next across the line then, can't quite match his teammate Norris for pace, but there's not a lot between them. Norris 5th, Piastri 6th. Gasly going well again, qualified 7th for the sprint and is up there in 7th at the moment, but a reminder, this is all just to get through into Q2. The fastest 16 progress, the slowest 6 in the field get eliminated, and right now the majority are all in the pit lane with the exception of Alex Albon, who is out circulating on the track, although I think he's about to come into, oh no, he's just gone out I should say. Sainz is in, Alonso, Bottas, Stroll and Perez all in the pit lane.
So with Lindblad having an issue, does that open the door for an Albon, Sainz or Alonso to squeeze through into Q2?
Very slow going Ollie Bearman, but I don't think that's an issue. I think he's just recharging, getting out of the way of a quicker car, having just come across the line to go 7th fastest. So again, Haas have put together a very tidy car here. Bearman scoring points in the sprint and in the first Grand Prix of the year, sits 7th. Ocon is a few tenths off, but is up there in the top 10. And right now, when you look at the two Red Bulls, well, they're on the back foot. They went out on the medium tyre. They're now back out there with what looks, at least on Max Verstappen's car, a set of soft tyres. But Verstappen is down in 15th behind his teammate Hadjar.
Yeah, but Harry, they haven't been out on the softs yet. This will be their first proper competitive lap coming up. So we expect them to be in the top 10. They're not going to be chasing pole position this weekend, that's for absolute certainty. But they're very out of position now.
It was this time last week, Max Verstappen crashing out of qualifying, the rears locking.
It was a strange one, wasn't it?
Really strange one. I don't think we've really truly gotten to the bottom of it. You dare say driver error, and it didn't look like driver error, but
I think it's to do with regenerative braking.
Well, that would be the assumption, right? But still, it was a fairly high-speed crash from Max Verstappen, who walked away from it. But we have seen crashes as a result of dealing with these new generation of cars and power surges. Oscar Piastri reported a 100 kilowatt power surge that he wasn't expecting, that was perhaps a contributing factor to why he crashed into the wall on the way to the formation lap in Australia, although he was also quick to hold his hand up and say, I probably took too much curb as well.
We saw quite a bit of it in FP1 yesterday, where people were making mistakes under braking early doors as they get to grips with the grip of the circuit. The track was green, and then you've got the regenerative braking as well, particularly into turn 6. People were struggling with braking, locking up rears or locking fronts. We're on board with Max Verstappen on the overtake now, flat out down towards turn 6. What's sector 1 like? And he is right on the money. So I think Max Verstappen's going to be just fine. Always he has a little bit of oversteer and then understeer going through turn 6. Sweeping through turn 7 now, Harry. Let's watch the throttle. Easy flat.
And there applies a bit of brake through the next right-hander, recharging the battery, under braking through the next set of left-handers of 9 and 10. Now it's a short blast down towards the braking zone of turn 11. Again, you can just hear the engine dipping down before he hits the brakes into the left-hander. The battery topped up almost to full, and now starts to deploy it, curves his way round the right-hander of turn 13, down that back straight, getting over 330 kph. Straight line mode on the active aero, open both front and rear wing before they slam shut under braking.
But it looked like the Red Bull ran out of battery quite early down that straight in comparison to the likes of McLaren and Mercedes from what I could see. So I'm not expecting this final sector to be absolutely brilliant. And I say that, and he goes purple in the final sector. So what on earth do I know? But it definitely looked like the battery pack was empty earlier down into 14.
You're right, it did. But let's blame the graphics for that one. 4th for Verstappen. 0.2 adrift of Charles Leclerc. As the clock has counted down to 0 then, Leclerc, Russell, Antonelli are the top 3. Who's in trouble? Arvid Lindblad has managed to get back out there, but he's down in 18th at the moment. This is the sound of the British rookie. Crosses the line. Tidy lap for the 18-year-old to put himself up into Q2, into 11th. That demotes Franco Colapinto. Lance Stroll's not getting out of this one. 21st for the Canadian in the Aston Martin. Neither for Fernando Alonso. He stays 19th at the flag. Colapinto, that's a bit more like it from the Argentine in his first full season of Formula One. Gets himself up into 10th. Bortoletto in the Audi is next across the line. He puts himself up into 7th. That puts the two Williams cars down into Q1. They're currently 17th and 18th. Perez does get out there, does take the flag, but in last place. The other Cadillac is still going here, and right now one Cadillac looks set to out-qualify an Aston Martin. Can Bottas do one further? No, he can't. He takes the flag in 20th. Having a look at Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon, they're not going to find improvements on this lap around, which just about saves Liam Lawson's bacon as he heads through into Q2. Out then of Q1 go the two Williams cars of Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon. Fernando Alonso 19, 2 seconds adrift. This is Albon. Terrible! And the frustration is clear for Albon. For a team that finished 5th in the Constructors' Championship last year, we're expecting to make the step up, maybe even to get on the coattails of the top 4 teams in Formula One. They've gone backwards, and by quite some way.
Yeah, really disappointing for Williams. I think everybody was hoping that they'd see a big improvement from them. They came out last year and said, look, we're not going to develop our car very much at all this year. We're putting all of our hopes on 2026. And it hasn't worked so far. They look really up against it. Car looks tricky to drive, and they've got a lot of work to do.
Sainz ahead of Albon, and Sainz missing out then on Q2 by a couple of tenths, and Albon, a fair way back from his teammate. 134.3 for Sainz and 134.7 for Albon. Alonso 19th, ahead of Bottas, who was ahead of Stroll, and Perez, the Cadillac, at the back in 22nd. Liam Lawson and Nico Hülkenberg just about making it through. So kind of actually the expected runners out in Q1. We expect 2 Cadillacs, we expect 2 Aston Martins, and to be honest, right now you expect 2 Williams with the performances that they're showing.
Absolutely. The other crazy thing from that session is I can only assume that Sergio Perez had a little bit of an issue, because the gap from 1st to 16th is just around about a second. The gap from 21st to 22nd was the same amount of time. So Sergio Perez a long way behind everybody else in that session.
Yeah, I think, Sergio Perez had an issue, didn't he, in practice with a fuel system issue. That left him in the garage for quite some time. Couldn't take to sprint qualifying either. So very much on the back foot, and I'm hearing that he wasn't getting no deployment during that qualifying session from his battery. So clearly Cadillac have got a lot of issues that they're trying to solve.
Yeah, it was a good lap.
It was a good lap, Carlos. That's all the car has in it. Let's come back and have a look what we can do for tomorrow.
Thank you.
Oh, that's hard to hear. James Vowles saying that's all the car had in it. Carlos Sainz feeling he got the most out of that 17th place.
Race control, Bortoleto Hadjar incident, turn 15 impeding has been noted. Going back to Carlos Sainz, Harry, how professional does he sound on the radio? Thanking the team. James Vowles saying, look, it's not good enough right now. I know that's all the car has in it. Let's take a look. Carlos Sainz is really good at working with his engineers and with his team and improving cars in general. You look at where he's left every team, it's always been on an upwards trajectory. He'll work hard to try and push this project forwards.
I think Carlos Sainz is an absolute class act, but if you are him right now, and look, things may change. They might say they could shave some weight, bring some performance parts, and suddenly be right back in the mix. But is there one part of you as a driver where you're looking at a team you could have signed for, maybe Audi, and you're Carlos Sainz, and you're looking at Bortoleto finished 7th in that session, scored points in Australia. Are you thinking, did I make a mistake here?
I don't think he can look at it like that. Last year he got a couple of podiums in the Williams and things were looking quite good. So I think he would have come into this year thinking that Williams would make quite a decent step. Of course, he would have known the aero figures and numbers going into this season and maybe known that they were on the back foot a bit. I don't think he would have expected them to be quite this poor. But last year was a promising year for Williams. It's just massively disappointing that so far this year it's not working out at all.
No, well, Carlos Sainz then out in Q1 at both Grand Prix this season. Albon with P18, his worst qualifying in China since 2019. Alonso out-qualifies the Cadillacs and his teammate Stroll for the second consecutive weekend, but only 19th for the Spaniard. Valtteri Bottas beats Perez in Q1 for the first time this season. It was the other way around last week. And with Bottas in 20th, you have Lance Stroll, who has now been out-qualified by Fernando Alonso for the 38th consecutive Grand Prix qualifying, down in 21st, only ahead of Sergio Perez.
That's a heck of a stat, Harry.
44-and-a-half-year-old Fernando Alonso. I mean, there's two things.
It's tough to take, isn't it?
There's two things at play there, aren't there? There's one of them's a force of nature. Was it you were saying is Fernando Alonso immortal? Is that a meme or something?
Somebody said it.
And the other one is, why does Lance Stroll bother? But anyway, well,
that's for a podcast, I think. But he's down in 21st, and Aston Martin are clearly struggling. He was only ahead of Sergio Perez. So we say goodbye to our slowest 6 runners, the 2 Williams, the 2 Aston Martins and the 2 Cadillacs, and we welcome back to the fold the remaining 16 drivers as we continue to qualify for the Chinese Grand Prix. And you can hear all 56 laps of racing on Sunday right over on BBC Radio 5 Live. We'll be on air from 6:45 in the morning, lights out for the second race of the season, 7 a.m, as we get the green light back on then for qualifying. Q2 underway, and it's Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes who heads out onto the track first. Had a rather bumpy start to the day, I think it's fair to say, for Antonelli.
Yes, poor start in the sprint, followed by contact down at turn 6. Went down to P9-10 at one point. Had a 10-second stop-go penalty that he took when the virtual safety car and then safety car came out in the sprint, but managed to recover very nicely. Just shows the quality and the pace of that Mercedes car. Yeah,
it certainly does. But Antonelli hoping to get the better of his teammate sooner rather than later. But George Russell, with all of that experience, really feels like he's on top form right now.
Really good form for George Russell. I mean, just to share with you, as we said, that last session, Charles Leclerc being P1 in Q1 is the first time in a proper session where it's a qualifying session or a race session this year where somebody's beaten George Russell.
How often are we going to be bringing that up as a statistic across the course of this year? We shall see. Just under 13 and a half minutes left to run then. 10 cars out on track, make that 11 as Ollie Behrman joins the fray. We are currently looking at Kimi Antonelli in his Mercedes as he heads round the final corner on a set of the Red Bull soft tyre, the quickest of the lot, as he gets going towards turn 1, a 270-degree right-hander. As you twist your way around a never-ending right-hander, it's almost like a roller coaster ride. You then dip downhill into the left-hander of turn 3, flick yourself out to the outside of the track through the kink of turn 4, the right-hand kink of turn 5 beckons, and then braking zone into turn 6, I should say. A right-hander, and Antonelli fastest through the first sector. But taken away quickly by George Russell, who has just embarked on a lap as well. Charles Leclerc out there too, but Antonelli now snaking his way through the middle sector, medium speed corners, the order of the day. Gets himself out of turn 10. A little bit of traffic in the form of Esteban Ocon, who doesn't get out of the way, sits right on the racing line, so Antonelli has to drive around him.
Yeah, I thought that was a bit out of order from Ocon, especially as he was quite close to the braking zone. I wonder if the FIA are going to look at that and deem that as a bit of obstructing. The thing that I think George Russell's doing really well is I think he's slightly adapted his braking style for these cars here in 2026. I feel like he's braking slightly softer at the beginning and basically prolonging his braking zone in comparison to Kimi Antonelli, who always looks to gain time on him under braking, and then because George has then recharged the battery quicker, he's able to deploy more in certain zones.
Well, as Antonelli crosses the line, it's a 1:32.950. Let's see what Russell's got. He'll be next over the line, and he finds 4.5 tenths over his teammate. A 1:32.5 for George Russell. But the two Ferraris are keeping themselves in this fight. A reminder, this is now a battle to get yourself inside the top 10 and progress through to Q3. Leclerc makes his way up into second spot. Hamilton, though, will be next across the line. He's fastest of anybody through the middle sector, and puts himself ahead of his teammate and up into second. Can't quite match George Russell, a couple of tenths adrift, as we now hear the sounds of the Red Bull powertrain in partnership with Ford. Full deployment, uses the rest of his battery, does Isaac Hadjar, right to the line before it resets. It's enough for fifth fastest and slowest of the time set so far.
It's closer to the pace than he was yesterday by quite a margin. So, you know, that's a step forwards for Red Bull.
It certainly is, as we see the first lap times coming then on the board for Q2. The second McLaren of Oscar Piastri puts it 7th. Max Verstappen pips his teammate by a couple of tenths up into 5th. We look for the 2 Audis, the 2 Haas cars, the 2 Alpines as well, and the 2 Racing Bulls. That midfield pack always tight in Formula One. And right now, Haas, Alpine, Racing Bulls all have a car, at least one car in the fight. So too for Audi. One small mistake is all it can take, and you find yourself back 3-4 positions.
And this man's been on great form, hasn't he? Ollie Behrman sweeps through the final corner, currently 13th, but hasn't done a time, and he moves up to 6th place, ahead of Lando Norris and Isaac Hadjar.
It's another good lap from Ollie Behrman, who continues his strong start to the year. China last year, where he scored his first points for Haas, now in his 2nd season as a Formula One driver. Made waves when he came in a couple of years ago to replace Carlos Sainz at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, who had appendicitis. Scored points on debut for Ferrari before a stellar debut year last year with the Haas team. Still a part of the Ferrari junior ranks, potentially a future Ferrari driver with Behrman, currently 6th. And talk about potential stars of the future. Arvid Lindblad is the next across the line, down in 15th. Doesn't progress up inside the top 10 on that first run. 12th for Lindblad, who has been up against it so far this weekend with not that much track time to his name. We're still waiting for the 2 Alpines to set lap times and the Racing Bulls of Liam Lawson. The last 3 yet to set their first laps.
I think Gasly's my hot shoe-in to make it through to Q3 of the people that haven't done a competitive time so far. I can't see Colapinto troubling the top 10, unfortunately, but Gasly, with that Mercedes powertrain in the back of that Alpine, looks to be quite competitive here. He's normally around P6, P7, drops into P8 on that lap. It's so competitive and congested from P5 down to P10. Only a couple of tenths in it.
Yeah, Gasly up to 8. Colapinto crosses the line then in 13th. Colapinto is actually quicker, a little bit quicker than Gasly in the first sector, but couldn't match his teammate throughout the lap. Colapinto is 2nd off the pace at the moment of George Russell, who sits pretty with a 1:32.523. Hamilton 2nd, 3/10 down. Then it's Leclerc, Antonelli, Verstappen the top 5. They're all in the pits. Everyone coming back now before a last run in Q2. Behrman is 6th, then comes Norris, Gasly 8th, Hadjar and Piastri the top 10. Right now, as it stands, we'd look to lose Hulkenberg's Audi, the Haas of Esteban Ocon, the Alpine of Franco Colapinto, the 2 Racing Bulls of Lawson and Lindblad, and the other Audi of Gabi Bortoleto down in 16th at the moment. 7 minutes and 25 seconds on the clock. Audi hoping to try and get one of their cars through into Q3. Bortoleto making his way down the pit lane now. Delivered Audi's first Q3 in points 1 week ago in Australia. Hulkenberg just missing out in qualifying on that rather annoying 11th place spot. I think he had a record one year for the amount of 11th places he'd qualified in.
Most of the time last year he was 11th, wasn't he?
Was it last year?
Yeah.
Just missing out, and unfortunately we didn't get to see what he had in the Grand Prix, with a technical issue preventing him from starting the race.
I think he would have come 11th.
It's a tough pill to swallow for Hulkenberg, but who is the first driver, or will be, hopefully, the first driver to race in China with 5 different engines. There's a stat you can have for free. 6.5 minutes left of Q2. Yeah, round 2 of 24 right here in Shanghai at the international circuit. We've just coming to the latter stages of Q2, but right now in qualifying it does seem like it is inevitable for George Russell to go on to take his 2nd pole of the season. That Mercedes just seems to have a little extra in the tank, but Ferrari with Hamilton and Leclerc both challenging not only in qualifying but in race trim as well. And once again the Red Bulls, Max Verstappen and Isaac Hadjar, seem to be on the back foot here with not enough power around around the circuit to really challenge for the upper echelon positions. Right, 5 minutes, 37, 36, 35 seconds remain. So final runs to be had then. Verstappen down in 5th, 6/10 adrift. Norris down in 7th, the reigning champion on an outlap right now. Hadjar down in 9th, 8/10 adrift. Piastri also out there on the track on an outlap in 10th. The McLarens could be in a bit of trouble here if they can't put a clean lap together.
I certainly think Piastri's got to deliver a clean lap. I think Norris is probably safe where he is, but he'll want to go out again, because I can't see more than 2 of those cars in the elimination zone currently going faster than Gasly or Hadjar, to be honest.
So the first runs, McLaren were on used tyres, along with Mercedes and Ferrari. Everyone else was on new, so that explains why they're looking a bit slow at the moment.
Thank you very much. It's the voice of the BBC F1 correspondent, Andrew Benson, alongside myself, Harry Benjamin, is the Formula E driver, Sam Bird. So, some fresh boots then for Oscar Piastri as he makes his way towards the right-hand kink of turn 5. Taken flat, deploys a bit of that battery, then recharges it, under braking for turn 6, a right-hander. Here the McLaren overtake activated, giving him an extra half a megajoule of energy to deploy. It's the same parameters as DRS. You can use it freely in qualifying in the designated zones, and then when it comes to race in the designated zones, when you're within a second of the car in front of you, you are allowed to use overtake mode. Piastri though, about a 10th and a half down off Russell through the middle sector. Leclerc 2/10 up on Russell right now and flying through the first 2 sectors. It's a battle to get yourself through into Q3. The top 10, the quickest 10 from this session, will progress.
But we haven't seen what George Russell can do on a new set of boots, so expect him to be challenging for purple sectors any minute. He's on an outlap or starting. Has he started? No, he hasn't. He's just on his outlap currently in sector 1. Piastri negotiates the final corner and puts himself only up into P5. So disappointing final sector for Oscar Piastri on a new set of soft tyres. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc crosses the line and just pips George Russell to go into P1.
What about Lewis Hamilton in the other Ferrari? Puts himself 3rd, 8/100th of a second down on his teammate. Leclerc, Russell, Hamilton, the top 3. Antonelli, Piastri, the top 5. Piastri 5th, now 6th as Norris crosses the line. Finds a 10th on his teammate, but the 2 McLarens down in 5th and 6th. We'll see what Max Verstappen has got. He's out there at the moment on an outlap. He'll get one final flyer in. So too will Oliver Behrman in the Haas. The same for Pierre Gasly and Isaac Hadjar. In fact, everybody out onto the circuit now, the 16 remaining runners.
Don't you feel like McLaren at the moment are, it's not no man's land, but they're very comfortably 3rd best, but it certainly feels like both in qualifying trim and race trim, Ferrari and Mercedes are just that step ahead of them right now. They've got to bridge that gap in both forms of Formula 1.
Yeah, I completely agree. It does feel like they are, you get the Mercedes, the Ferraris, and then you'll just get the McLarens kind of in the middle bit.
On their own
before, and then a bit of a gap back to best of the rest, and then you might find a Red Bull as well lurking there as it currently stands. So let's see though, if anyone can get themselves up into the mix. Max Verstappen and Red Bull will, but right now he's behind both those McLarens. Antonelli's out there flying through the middle sector. George Russell lighting up the sector times as Antonelli continues to fly. Hulkenberg down 11th, not too far away from getting himself up into Q3. Gasly, Behrman are currently occupying 8th and 9th as the best of the rest in the midfield runners looking for good results. As
Hulkenberg misses out by 0.02 of a second to go through to Q3 with only 1 minute and 11 seconds left. I think that's Hulkenberg done and dusted as Kimi Antonelli now pops his Mercedes into P1.
Hulkenberg down to 11th then, flying. Liam Lawson's on a good lap at the moment. So too is Arvid Lindblad. The other Audi of Gabriel Bortoletto's down in 16th and last of the remaining runners. Hadjar crosses the line, could be in trouble here. Doesn't improve, stays 10th. His teammate Verstappen splits the McLarens up in 6th. Can anybody knock out Isaac Hadjar? We've got a yellow flag out on track. Could that prevent fast laps from being made? It's in the final corner and that's going to ruin lap time. It's Gabby Bortoletto who's found himself off. No one's going to improve. Bortoletto's in the gravel and he's trying to get himself out of it. He hasn't got himself beat. He was heading he's found himself right up by the pit lane wall, and now finds himself back into the pit lane. So will that affect any of the remaining runners out there? I think that rather puts a damp squib on Q2 and no one looking to impress, having to back off there, but Gasly might just be able to find the time.
Yeah, I think he's safe anyway, down in P9 at the moment, no one else improving. Very few people actually improved on this second run, Harry.
Yeah, you're right. Gasly...
Not the amount that we've seen.
Well, actually, Gasly finds himself up into 5th. What about Oscar Piastri? Can he improve? He's safe already, doesn't improve, stays 8th. Franco Colapinto slides out of the final corner, keen to impress here, and by 0.05 of a second, misses out on Q3. Colapinto, 12th place for him. His teammate Gasly up in 5th.
When I said no one improving, I meant much. I meant much, Harry. Gasly was the one that made the most spaces and time there. Lando Norris in P5.
Something is not right with the car. I've got major understeer, box to check the car. That is what George Russell said, and he didn't complete the lap he was on. He wasn't exactly lighting up the timing screens and then bailed out of it at the end. Now the yellow flag that came out and prevented the likes of I think Liam Lawson from improving was Gabriel Bortoletto. He gets on the curb on the outside coming into the final corner and just completely loses control of his Audi.
Yeah, and rear left hit the tyre barriers quite hard. Hopefully that hasn't hurt the gearbox there, because that could be quite an expensive shunt.
Flies across the gravel, which works to slow the car down and dissipate the energy. But yeah, the rear left, a fairly hefty hit into the wall, but manages to get it going again and find the pit lane. Just a snap that he was never going to come back from for Bortoletto, who finds himself 16th. So from the highs of Q3 last week, now finds himself slowest of the 16 runners. Out then from Q2 we lose Nico Hulkenberg's Audi in 11th, Franco Colapinto's Alpine in 12th, Ocon in the Haas 13th, once again looking out qualified by Ollie Behrman. The two Racing Bulls are 14th and 15th, Lawson ahead of Lindblad and Bortoletto in 16th.
So right now the Mercedes mechanics are checking George Russell's front wing just to check that there's nothing wrong with that and that they've got the right angle on his front wing.
Bortoletto straight out of the car and already in the middle of the Audi garage debriefing with the engineers. Okay, through into Q3 then, and topping that session was Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes. Charles Leclerc was second, George Russell third, Hamilton fourth and Norris the top five. They all progressed through along with the two Red Bulls of Verstappen and Hadjar, Pierre Gasly once again, and Ollie Behrman once again, along with the two McLarens as well. So again, it's a good shout out for Gasly and Behrman, both putting their Alpine and Haas into that top 10 respectively.
Yeah, doing a really good job. But we've definitely got kind of two classes at the moment, haven't we? We've got the Ferraris and the Mercedes, and then a little bit of everybody else, and that order is swapping and changing all the time, but most certainly the top four are being dominated by Ferrari and Mercedes.
Hulkenberg in 11th, you said it, missed out by Q3 by just 0.02 of a second. In Australia, it was 82 thousandths of a second. So,
what, you mean Nico Hulkenberg was 11th?
Yeah, no, it's a shock, isn't it?
Oh my word.
2 11th places on the road. Let's hope he can start the race tomorrow. Colapinto 12th. That's actually his best qualifying performance since Canada last June. So that is an improvement from what we've seen this weekend for Franco Colapinto, but still very much put into the shade by an on-fire Pierre Gasly.
Yeah, he's driving very nicely, Pierre Gasly. But, you know, even though that's a better run for Colapinto, what is he, still 4.5 tenths off his teammate? So still quite a gap.
What was it, a 1:33.3 for Colapinto, a 1:33.0. So, about 3.5 tenths. But still his best quality since Canada last year in 12th. Ocon in 13th. Lawson 14th, and Lindblad qualifies in the same position as he did for the sprint earlier on in 15th. They are all ahead of Gabriel Bortoleto in 16th, who caused the yellow flag, crashing across the gravel in his Audi in the closing stages of that session. Bit of action down at Mercedes, front wing change for George Russell's Mercedes. You said we caught eyes on them working on that car. He was reporting something didn't feel right during the last run in Q2. Could there be some problems then for George Russell's Mercedes? Front wing change, the mechanics adjusting and tightening it up. They've got time to do that. They can do that in the gap between now and Q3. But Russell, who has had a fairly smooth run to things at the moment, well, it's the first sign of any kind of trouble for the Brit.
Yeah, he's had a trouble-free start to the season, hasn't he? Everything's gone his way. That's the first sign of him maybe lacking a little bit of speed.
Franco Colapinto, well, I told you it was his best qualifying since Canada, and out of the car and straight away gets a round of applause from Flavio Briatore, a pat on the shoulder, and Colapinto actually looks a bit dejected there, but Briatore looking to comfort him almost, which
that was nice to see.
It's a bit uncharacteristic for Flavio.
After what we saw on Netflix, absolutely.
Maybe he's seen that and gone, oh dear.
I need to be nicer to my drivers.
Channel his inner Jonathan Wheatley, who I'm sure I would have liked to hear his words to Bortoleto after his crash. I'm sure they were nothing but encouraging and positive from the nicest team principal in the paddock, quite possibly, and I mean that genuinely. Right, Charles Leclerc's been looking quick. He's sat patiently in his Ferrari car with the screen down at the moment, looking at himself and his car, because that's what's being shown on the TV. But Charles Leclerc then, who comes here with a best qualifying result of 4th back in 2019, a best race result of 4th, and hasn't ever visited the podium in China. Looking to put that right tomorrow on Sunday, where we go racing around this Shanghai International Circuit. 56 laps of running. You can hear it all right over on 5 Live. 6:45 in the morning we'll be on air ahead of Lights Out at 7 o'clock. Bit of drama for George Russell with a front wing change, but they've sent him out there down towards the end of the pit lane where he meets the green lights, and we're back on for Q3. It's the top 10 shootout and the fight for pole position ahead of the Chinese Grand Prix.
So the two Mercedes cars have done one run less over the course of the first 2 qualifying sessions than everybody else. Looking at the laps, Kimi Antonelli and George Russell have circulated 9 times. Every other car has done 13, 14 or 15 laps in the case of Pierre Gasly.
Oh, and we've got George Russell slow.
Jumping top right.
Looks okay now.
It's not. Just check boost. I've got a massive engine brake in here.
Russell is stopped on track. The hazard lights are flashing. He's asking the team to check the boost. He's got engine braking warnings, and the crowd can't quite believe it. The man who we're all predicting an easy ride to pole position, I think he's stopped on the inside
at turn number 3, just on the exit of turn 3. This has massive implications for the rest of the weekend. If he can't get that car going, we'll be seeing a red flag, and then it's up to he's got it going.
He's got it going, but they'll be worried about if that could rear its head again first signs here that the Mercedes isn't exactly bulletproof.
No, and it's not pulling at all, so he's not got any speed. I don't think he can shift up to second at the moment.
That does not sound or look good as he slows it down, turns it into the right-hander, crawling around turn 6.
No, he can't shift up, Harry. He can't shift up, so
box issue.
He's going to have to come back in the box. Maybe George Russell will not be on the front row of the grid this weekend, and it'll be up to his teammate, Kimi Antonelli.
I cannot shift the gears. Stuck in first.
Can't shift the gears, you called it, Sam, but also if he's having to crawl around at that pace, surely that's going to be a yellow flag in every sector that Russell heads through, and the next car that's flying behind him will be his own teammate, Kimi Antonelli.
No, what he'll do is he'll stay way offline. There'll be white flags shown around the circuit by the marshals and on the marshal automated boards now that signals that there's a slow car moving around the circuit.
So shouldn't impact Antonelli then, who is making his way down towards turn 11 now and catching his teammate quick.
Absolutely. George Russell will now move to the inside of the circuit as Kimi Antonelli blends and goes round the outside of his teammate. There we are, nicely negotiated down the back straight, deploying the energy into that low drag aero configuration that everybody has for this season in 2026.
Straight line mode, as they call it.
Straight line mode, there we go.
The active aero where the front and rear wings open. The rear wing, it looks like what the old DRS was, and in terms of the mechanism it is the same, but it is not a replacement for DRS. The drag reduction system is gone, but Antonelli crosses the line and goes fastest of the time set so far, in which he is the only one. So he has come across the line with a 1:32.322 as George Russell continues to slowly make his way back to the pit lane. The others can all push on with their first flying laps. One Mercedes down. Can the Ferraris capitalise on this? Charles Leclerc pops himself up into second, but he's 3/10 adrift of Antonelli. Hamilton behind Leclerc in third. It's Antonelli with the quickest time of the 3 sets so far.
And a quick time as well. That's actually the fastest time we've seen this weekend, 32.322. George Russell. Oh. Nope.
I think Charles Leclerc set a 1/3. Oh no, Kimi Antonelli is with a 1:33.322. Leclerc and Hamilton, the two behind. Then comes Behrman in fourth in the Haas, who's just come over the line. So this could really improve some of those midfield prospects if George Russell has some kind of terminal problem. George Russell has made it back to the pit lane.
What's interesting about those first times from Antonelli and the two Ferraris is that Antonelli improved by 1/10 compared to Q2, but the two Ferraris are both slower. Now we've just seen Lewis Hamilton have an error in turn 10, and we're getting a replay of Charles Leclerc. He had a bit of a moment going onto the back straight, so maybe that's where they've lost their time. The data system on Formula 1 implied that Hamilton had lost as much as half a second with his slide, but neither of them improved is the point. So there's still room for Ferrari to improve and get Antonelli's time, because they were both within range of that in Q2, in the sense that it would look like from their Q2 times the Ferraris could match that Antonelli time from the first run in Q3.
Yeah, it's the second time in this qualifying session that Lewis Hamilton has struggled to get on the power out of turn 9 and through turn 10. He had a big slide in Q1, I think it was, earlier on in the session. Now again, when it matters in Q3, he'll have another go at it though, and then his teammate looked to struggle to get on the power out of turn 12.
The two McLarens have come across the line. Piastri second, Norris now third. 2.5 tenths adrift for Piastri, almost 3 tenths for Lando Norris of Kimi Antonelli's benchmark time. The two Red Bulls, Verstappen ahead of Hadjar, both a second adrift. Then comes Behrman in 8th, Gasly 9th. 9 cars have set a lap time. Russell, who went out there for a first lap and came to a halt on the exit of turn 3 and then got going again but couldn't upshift, couldn't change the gears in that Mercedes, and then has made it back to the garage. And with just over 6.5 minutes left, it's a race against time to get Russell back out there and back in the fight for pole position, which so far is going to Kimi Antonelli, his teammate.
You sense that, you know, if all George Russell needs is one lap and he'll be on the front row of the grid, if not on pole position. So you'd say that Mercedes have 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes to sort this problem out. Otherwise, pole position looks like it's going elsewhere for the first time this season.
Right now, it is Antonelli with that provisional pole. Antonelli, who has started on sprint pole before and became the youngest pole sitter as a result, but yet to do it in Grand Prix fashion. Could be on for a first career Grand Prix pole.
I tell you what, if George Russell does qualify 10th, it'd make for an interesting race, wouldn't it?
We were having that conversation earlier.
I think he probably could, you know.
It'll be a fascinating watch. There's still frantic work going on that Mercedes, up on its jacks, plugged into the hydraulic system as they have the car up onto the jacks. The mechanics working hard to get to the underside of that car. Russell sits in the cockpit, his visor up. You can see his eyes looking to the right-hand side, seeing what's going on. 5.5 minutes on the clock. His teammate sits on provisional pole. Piastri second, Norris third. Then comes Charles Leclerc. Hamilton the top 5. Verstappen and Hadjar, the 2 Red Bulls, are in 6th and 7th, with Behrman 8th, Gasly in 9th. 1.7 seconds covering the field. And you know what? They're changing steering wheels down at Mercedes, and it's a quick change. It's already plugged into the steering column, but no immediate action to send George Russell back out yet.
Well, what they were doing there was just to see if it's an issue with the upshifter on the steering wheel. So change the steering wheel, change the hardware, because maybe they're struggling to see anything software-wise or gearbox-related currently. They've got the car up on the jacks and running the car in first gear, seeing if then it will shift on its own while it's in the air. And right now, from the body language, they were struggling to get it into second gear.
4.5 minutes left. Everybody in the pits, waiting to make their move, with the grandstands in China absolutely packed out, certainly along that start-finish straight, and they are loving every minute of it, and they want to see cars back out on track, standing on their feet, smiles everywhere. It treats it as quite a show so far. Fantastic sprint race to kick-start the morning, with a great scrap between George Russell and Lewis Hamilton, and Charles Leclerc getting involved too. Some nice midfield battles, and now we go qualifying for the Grand Prix, and the man that everybody was tipping for an easy walk to pole position, possibly blighted by reliability concerns, still in the garage. We're all waiting with bated breath in this last 3.5 minutes of qualifying as we set the grid for the Chinese Grand Prix. The man who has walked this season so far, and we're not even at the second race, but the man we're expecting to easily put it on pole position, George Russell, is in a race against time to get that car out and set any kind of lap time. Reliability issues. He's stopped on track. He's made it back. He can't shift gears, Sam Bird. George Russell was in trouble here.
Absolutely. They've got 60 seconds to send that car out on track if they want to do a competitive lap in Q3. Are Mercedes going to be able to send that car, or is it not ready?
It doesn't look ready. They're all surrounding that Mercedes car in the garage. They've just put a tyre on and tightened it with the wheel gun. It's all on teammate Kimi Antonelli now, who is currently on provisional pole. If he can hold on to it, he will become the youngest pole sitter in Formula One history. Currently that record held by Sebastian Vettel back in Monza in 2008 at the age of 21 years and 73 days. Today at 19 years and 202
and George
days.
Russell is out of the pits.
Antonelli starts his flying lap. Russell emerges. Can Russell get it all together? He'll have one attempt to do it.
And that's all I think George Russell needs. Such is the form of the man, although he did have an issue with having too much understeer in Q2. His heart rate's going to be elevated. There'll be a little bit more stress than normal. Harry, can he get the pole position this afternoon, as Kimi Antonelli is right on the pace that he set earlier, just 1/100th of a second off in Sector 1.
It's Antonelli on provisional pole, Piastri second, Norris third. third. Then comes the two Ferraris of Leclerc and Hamilton. But Norris is flying in the first sector, fastest of anybody in the McLaren. The two Red Bulls down in 6th and 7th. Verstappen ahead of Hadjar. Then comes the British driver for Haas, Ollie Behrman in 8th, ahead of Pierre Gasly's Alpine. And George Russell now out on track in the Mercedes with no lap time to his name, with 1 lap to do it. 1 lap to get pole position for George Russell. Let's see if he can make it happen. Kimi Antonelli has found time in the middle sector, but Norris is flying. Leclerc losing a bit of time in that first sector. Pierre Gasly's going well too in the first sector. Fastest of anybody in the middle sector for the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, but it will be Antonelli who comes to the line first.
Sweeps through turn 16. This should put him a little bit quicker than before, and it does. 2.5 tenths, Harry.
Wow.
A 32.0.
Wow. That is a fantastic final sector from Kimi Antonelli. But Lando Norris has the edge in the first sector. What's he got to the line? Loses time. Norris can't improve. He stays behind his teammate in 3rd place. Can Charles Leclerc ruin the party? Fastest of anybody in the middle sector. He gets up to 2nd in his Ferrari, but that Mercedes is still away. Hamilton round the final corner now. Can he out-qualify his teammate? Yes, he can. Lewis Hamilton to the front row of the grid in 2nd. George Russell is coming through the first sector now. He'll have 1 lap to piece it all together. Pierre Gasly next across the line with another impressive lap time, and looks like he'll win out best of the rest in his Alpine. The Frenchman 6th, ahead of Ollie Behrman, who's the first to take the flag in 7th. The clock has counted down to 0. What of the two Red Bulls? Hadjar to the line, it's 7th for the Frenchman in his 2nd qualifying for Red Bull. Verstappen to the line, pips him just. The two Red Bulls neck and neck. Verstappen 7th, Hadjar 8th, but it's all on George Russell now, Sam, and he's a 10th down on Antonelli in the middle sector.
He is indeed. He was right on the money in sector 1. He's lost a little bit of time in sector 2. He's on the back straight now, using battery pack and internal combustion engine up to top speed. Soon the revs will drop and he'll be lifting and coasting for a little bit before braking hard into turn 14. I've got a feeling that Antonelli's got this, unless Russell can pull something out the bag in these final 2 corners.
1 corner to go now for George Russell. The Silver Arrow emerges into the sunlight, foot to the floor, to the line for the Brits, and it's 2nd place. It's pole for Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes, who becomes the youngest pole sitter in Formula One history. It's a front row lockout for Mercedes. Russell getting it all together at the end, has to settle for 2nd. Then it's the two Ferraris, Hamilton ahead of Leclerc, the two McLarens, Piastri ahead of Norris, with Pierre Gasly a magnificent 7th for Alpine, ahead of the two Red Bulls.
That's a pole position, mate.
Yeah, let's go, man. Woo.
As Pete Bonington, Kimi Antonelli's race engineer, congratulates him. Pete Bonington, or Bono, who was Lewis Hamilton's engineer for all his time at Mercedes, now with the task of getting Kimi Antonelli together for a championship fight. Pierre Gasly was 7th, the two Red Bulls of Max Verstappen and Isaac Hadjar 8th and 9th, with the Brit Ollie Behrman in 10th. That is 4 British drivers inside the top 10, and that is qualifying done and dusted ahead of the Chinese Grand Prix. Kimi Antonelli on pole, 1:32.064. He'll be happy with that, but I think Russell and Mercedes will be happy that they even got him out in time.
They'll be thrilled. A great job by the whole Mercedes team there to ensure that that car got back out again and is now on the front row instead of the 5th row of the grid, where it forever looked like he was destined to be, with 2.5 minutes to go in the session and the car was still in the garage. It was looking bleak for George Russell, so to be on the front row for tomorrow's race is almost like a win for him, to be honest. He can fight for the win from 2nd on the grid.
Kimi Antonelli on pole becomes the youngest ever pole sitter in Formula One history. Do you know when the last Italian was on pole position, Sam Bird? Any guesses?
Giancarlo Fisichella.
Oh, he's got it in his locker.
Oh, in a Renault.
I know, you were nearly there.
No, not in the Force India.
In the Force India.
In the Force India at Spa in 2009.
Yes, he's got it. He's got it. Well done. Yeah. Last Italian on pole, Giancarlo Fisichella, Belgian.
Yeah.
09 in that Force India.
He's a top guy, Giancarlo.
Hey,
really
he's still kicking about, isn't he?
He's still
part of the Ferrari
about,
family, isn't he?
Part of the AF Corsa Ferrari family. It's got.
He'll be happy. The Italians will be absolutely raving about this.
Absolutely. Big news in Italy, this will be.
It really is. And a confidence boost nonetheless for Antonelli. When Russell wasn't there to keep in it, Antonelli was able to deliver the lap.
Well, you say he wasn't there.
Well, no.
He was there. I mean,
he was there.
George Russell had the opportunity. He had a lap. Okay, he didn't fully know what he had underneath him because of the front wing change, because of the issue that he just encountered with not being able to shift up. However, Antonelli delivered by far and away the best lap, 2.2 tenths up the road from his teammate, and it's not very often that we've said that. Normally Kimi Antonelli's been 2 tenths behind his teammate, so he'll be going to sleep very, very nicely tonight.
Want to make sure he gets off to a good start tomorrow. That has been the Achilles heel so far from the Australian Grand Prix and the sprint race earlier today for Kimi Antonelli. But everyone is up on their feet in the grandstands. The wind's picked up because there is a plethora I should say, of flags for Lewis Hamilton as they cheer him on from third. But let's hear from your pole sitter, Kimi Antonelli, speaking with Jolyon Palmer.
Okay, well, I'm down here with Formula One's youngest ever Grand Prix pole sitter, Kimi Antonelli. Congratulations. You've just beaten Sebastian Vettel's record. How was it out there?
Yeah, it was a pretty clean session. So, really happy. Of course, unfortunately, George had an issue in Q3, so it would have been cool to see him with 2 sets. But, yeah, I think was a really good session. Clean one. No mistake, and looking forward to the race tomorrow.
And how could you keep it calm? Were you aware of what was happening on George's car, or were you just so focused on yourself there?
Well, I saw he had the issue, but I just tried to keep my focus, to stay calm, and try to deliver a good lap, and which was at the end.
And a record-breaking lap. Well done, Kimi.
Thank you.
George, speaking of the issues, I mean, that was a difficult session. It looked like already in Q2 it wasn't straightforward, but you got out of there in the end. You managed to get a front row out of it.
Yeah, definitely damage limitation. I mean, in Q2, the front wing broke. Was wrapping our heads around that. Then obviously went out in Q3, stopped on track, car wasn't restarting, couldn't change gear. And then just really happy to be standing here because, started the last lap, had no battery, no tyre temp, no nothing. So, but the team have done a really great job to get us into this position. It could have been much worse. So, very glad and well done to this guy, first pole. So.
Well, you've been formidable so far this season. Are you guys going to put on a fight, bit of a show out front for us tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously we need to take care of the guys in red as well. They were super fast off the line. So I'm sure Lewis is going to be pretty dicey at the beginning of the race. But I think for us to try and keep it clean, have a good race, try and put on a good race for the fans and see what we can do.
All right, well done, George. Which brings me nicely to Lewis. In the top 3, you love it here in China, I know. It's been a great circuit for you in the past. And that was a big lap at the end. I saw the moment you had on the first one in Q3, but you put it together when it mattered.
Yeah, it was actually a really tough qualifying, a bit harder this one with the wind. It's so gusty today, so putting the laps together was challenging, and Charles putting in great laps. These guys were putting in great laps, so I'm really, really happy to be up here and grateful to be up here with these guys. They've been rapid so far this season, but we did some good work. The engineers did some great work over the break, and we managed to get a little bit closer to these guys, so that's a real positive. We take that forwards.
And the gap was really coming down as well, as you said. Have you got some powder still dry for the race tomorrow for a fight?
It's still going to be a challenge, but I'm sure we'll have some fun. I'm looking forward to it. We'll have a lot of fun. Learn a lot in the sprint race, so let's hope tomorrow is not as windy as this, and our goal is to try and break the gap between these guys somehow.
All right, well done, Lewis, and thank you everybody. Good luck for the race tomorrow.
Jolyon Palmer speaking to your top 3 qualifiers Kimi Antonelli on pole, goes straight over to celebrate with his father. Russell in second, Hamilton in third. Your big takeaway from that, Sam?
Big takeaway is nothing's really changed from this morning, to be honest. Great job by Kimi Antonelli. Thrilled for him. I mean, that's what an accolade to be the youngest pole sitter in Formula One history. So history has been made today, and that's the big takeaway from this session. Something that was long in the making. We thought Max Verstappen would break that record all those years ago. For so long we were expecting that. It didn't happen for him. Sebastian Vettel has lost the record. It now belongs to Kimi Antonelli.
It certainly does. He will line up on pole position for the Chinese Grand Prix with his teammate George Russell alongside. Then it's the two Ferraris, Hamilton, Leclerc, the two McLarens, Piastri and Norris. Gasly's Alpine ahead of the two Red Bulls of Verstappen and Hadjar, with Ollie Behrman your top 10. And you can listen to the race on 5 Live. All 56 laps of running will be building up from 6:45 Sunday morning ahead of Lights Out at 7 o'clock. That just about does it from us. We're going to go away and chat about today and ponder everything on our Checkered Flag podcast, which you'll be able to listen to on BBC Sounds. Just search F1 on the BBC Sounds app. But for now, my thanks to Andrew Benson, to Sam Bird. We'll see you for race day. Lights Out at 7 o'clock on 5 Live. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.